Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and Happy New Year. So today I want to walk you through another UX case study. Actually, this is a real project. And which I worked on in my early UX career at a startup company. I got to work on this project with a couple of team members and build up a mobile app called First Term. And it turned out into a really nice project on my portfolio and helped me land on my first job in the Silicon Valley at a big company as UX designer. So I wanted to share with you the actual details, how I worked on this, how I approached this project, and especially how I turned my project experience into a compelling story in the format of a portfolio. So before I start, just a quick reminder. So I share everything about UX on this YouTube channel, from interviewing tips to portfolio review and design critics. Please hit the subscribe so you won't miss any of my upcoming videos, and there will be more exciting stuff to come. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so what you're looking at is my web portfolio, and the specific web page is focused on this project at First Term, which is a responsive web app that I built during my time at a startup company. So back then, the challenge I always want to emphasize, in any kind of portfolio, I think it's always I want to recommend to have a clear statement of what is the problem you're solving and what are the deliverables, what was your role on the team. So in this case, I just put it really clear in a brief one sentence. The challenge was really to build an AI dermatology web app that help users assess any skin concerns. And in terms of the deliverables, I worked on user testing from an affinity map, low fidelity wireframes, UI, and final prototypes. And my role was the lead product designer. So right following that, I think, a strong hero image is always helpful, I think, as a start to set the stage of your portfolio project. So if I recommend using any kind of presentation template or tools or phone mocks, to make this really strong. So what I show here is one of the final screens, finalized design, and a high fidelity mockup in a phone screen. So I just selected a very clean, simple phone mockup to demonstrate this final design. So there are different versions, more you can go fancier or more vibrant colors. But anyway, long story short, I think do your best job to feature your finalized design, or at least something really a highlight that showcase your visual and design capability, and put that in the hero image as a start. So it set up a really strong beginning that raised the audience interest to continue read your project. And so basically now I have the subject line, what is First Term? And this gives a quick introduction. It is basically an AI dermatology web app that can help users assess any skin concerns. And here again, I laid out the key challenge that I was working towards in this project. From the current web requires the design to make the site looks more professional and trustworthy, to this current product really requires more image to train the network, CNN, to enhance the accuracy. And the product is currently a free online service where the owner of the company is looking to see opportunities how to generate revenue. And then I laid out what are the key goals and metrics. I think this is also a critical part before you actually jump into the project story, to help your audience understand, okay, what are the goals you're trying to achieve here? And how are you going to plan to measure the success? And following that, I started that into research process. And in this session, it's up to you, however you want to show it. But what I learned is, I think when you get to research process, if the role you're interviewing for is actually a UX designer, this is a part of good to have, but you don't necessarily want to dive too much in depth. So the key elements of this session particularly is to show your findings. Briefly touch on what are your research approach, whether you did either interviews or use a survey or A/B testing. Talk briefly about the actual research methods, but actually focus more on what is your take, what's your finding. And in this part, it will be synthesis and my analysis here. I use this chart to more showing visually, okay, this research really helped me identify the problem, the key pain points of this current product, which are, for example, number one, none of the users find the product easy to use and clear to navigate. and 3 out of the 10 users understand how to upload the 2 photos with no problem, which was a key step to actually get the product working. Less than half, like 4 out of 10 users understand the result page without much confusions. 5 out of 10 find the result page clear to read and easy to follow. And only 3 out of the 10 would recommend the site to a friend if she has or he has a skin condition. So this part, without much detail to do with this specific project, what I want to emphasize is use data and use some or bullet point to really highlight what was your research finding that lead to your next step of the design process. So then I showed a affinity map, which is part of the insights generation to help me focus after the research and the findings, what are the problems that I decided to focus on. And this affinity map, by understanding and analyze what are the most important things to users and what are the most important things to business, to lay this out in this chart, that really helped me understand, okay, this is the area on the up right corner are the ones that I decided to focus on. So then I showed a couple of pictures, examples of how I work with my team in terms of the ideation part, with the card sorting, and how do we land on to how we approach the problem and land onto solutions. I did not go too much detail in the session, only like, for example, the task flows and some of the ideation process was just captured in pictures. You can totally expand more here, but I decided to focus more on the actual solutions part, which I think this is the most important part of this specific project. So comes into solutions, I did not go right into high fidelity box. So I started with the lo-fi wireframes, which is how I approached the project. And these are basically a quick overview of this onboarding journey with the annotations highlighting, okay, for example, here, this clear instructions right before opening the camera. This is something the current product did not have, which is one of the problems that I was able to identify during the research. None of the users we interviewed understand how to start, what are the 2 photos they're supposed to take and upload so they can get actually good result of what potential skin concerns they have. So in this case, the idea is to, before the user get into the camera view in the number 3, the third screen, to actually show a quick instruction of step-by-step to give some detailed instructions and quick tips on photo 1, make a close-up, photo 2, take a full area, and then tap the search where you will be able to see the result. So the idea is in this lo-fi wireframes, I was able to use those quick annotations to explain what are some of the new elements I introduced in this new design and why I did it. So moving on to the high fidelity prototypes, because of this project was actually designed based on the platform for a web product. So the approach I did was starting with a mobile first approach. So I can actually started analyzing and understand what are the most essential features and then translate that design into larger devices. So this is different than if you're working on a mobile only or a mobile app product, because in terms of responsive design, this gives me the background and context of how I approach it and how I scaled it from mobile version to the desktop version. So following through that, I started lay out some of the before and after screens to highlight really what I did in the new design and what is the before and after the difference. So I included a clickable prototype, which is a link that shows more of a demonstration. But in the actual portfolio, I want to give some really clear examples of what was the existing product experience. So I wanted to really showcase what was the original design and what is the new design that I landed on. And so I decided to use this format to show the before and after side by side. For example, the first one I have here is showing the home screen basically. And the before, you can see that it's basically very text heavy and it's not quite clear, okay, press here to take a photo, and then you will have to go back here and press again to take another photo. And in the new experience, it's much more user-friendly with a quick guide and introduction of, okay, this is a straight-step process. All you need is snap 2 photos, search, and then look at the treatment or assess the results. And because we learned that one of the key problem was also how can we build trust with the customers, because this was an early stage startup company. So I came up with this idea showing, like, before we actually get into the step-by-step guide, give some sense of, okay, what is this technology about and how many images we have in the database to help evaluate this condition to help build the trustworthy. So then moving on to the, as you scroll, like in the before design, have a bunch of like text heavy, how this product works, and which we moved up to actually, so the user can see those before they actually take a photo. So they understand the process before they actually, get into the take photo and search for result process. So this part, I think the problem, is pretty obvious. Like in the original design, the instructions was put at the bottom of the page. So no user, most of all, like none of the users actually got to see those instructions because they were positioned way below. And some of them might see it after they tap on the search, but most of the users that did not even notice the instructions was like presented because they were like just put too far bottom to the end. So that part was moved to the beginning, right below the hero image. And also like a key change that I made was to combine the 2-step press to take a photo, which was like 2 big rectangular frames in our original design, that into just one camera button, which is very like intuitive and visual friendly. And it's a one-tap process. You just tap the camera button and take 2 photos back to back and go ahead, see the result. So it's a more streamlined experience. Then I showed also some example during the searching process, instead of the original design, which has some photos that sometimes people find annoying or not quite visually pleasant, to take that into a more abstract approach, which also like this is actually circle progress bar. So as the user waits to see the result, we can show like some data on one hand to communicate the trustworthy. We're comparing your pictures with over 300,000 images in our database. At the same time, this is actually a animation, like animated progress circle to indicate, okay, how much longer do I need to wait before I see the result? So you see that I didn't really show every single step or every single example of the whole journey. I just took a couple of key screens, which I think really tell the most interesting part of the story in this project portfolio. Because, at the end of the day, I think the whole purpose of a portfolio is to get you to the next round of the interview. So a lot of the time what I see common problem is like people tend to jump into too much details and want to cover every single step of a project, which is sometimes possible, but for a large scale project, it's going to go too long. So what I always recommend is try to focus and like understand what are the most interesting part of your story. You don't have to show everything, but show the most interesting part and enough to and just enough of amount of information to prove that you are qualified and might be a good match for this job. So at the end, I have the validation session, which basically I did validation testing with both the mobile and desktop version with 10 users. And this is a summary of the findings, in contrast to what we have in the beginning of the research finding. This is a huge improvement. Majority of users find the product easy to use, clear to navigate, and we're able to upload 2 photos with no problem and understand the result page with no confusions. So, this is one example. I think, sometimes you might work on a project like this that you don't really have the post-launch full complete data set. So you can't say like this improved company revenue by certain percent, or we're able to increase like new user base by whatever percentage. But still, there is a way to show impact and result. And this is one example. If you did some validation, even it is part of the testing, research testing, it's okay to show those data. And that helps to convey like what's the impact and positive result of your redesign. At the end, I always have an after thoughts session. So for example, here I laid out some thoughts around like, with the web redesign, I was able to like significantly improve the site clarity, navigation, and mobile experience. But there are a couple of things for future improvement that I would love to work on. For example, number one, consider adding more information such as testimonial, user reviews, press, and other supportive data to help build the trust with users, which is a common challenge for a lot of startup companies, especially when it comes to digital health. Number two, during the searching period, users would like to see animation with progress bar. If they add video ad in future, it should allow users to skip the ad as needed. Three, when looking at the results, additional information communicating accuracy and severity can help. So this is back to the result page where we didn't really look too much in detail, but how the result got presented was fairly straightforward without much to touch on the detail level of what accuracy and severity of each result. Let's go back and take a look. Okay, I think, this is just showing the searching bar. So this is the part I did actually not include specific sample in the portfolio, which might be helpful to have, but I decided not to because I have that more detailed version in my presentation slide deck. So if you get to the, chance to present the project as you're moving along into the interviews, like to the on-site interviews or project presentation, that will be the chance you can actually dive into more details and show like more examples, like for example, how the result page look like and why you make certain changes. Last, when setting a case, provide an option that allow user to add more photo. And for paid service, to ask a dermatology, user would like to understand more about the credibility of the service. Again, this is another part, paid service was part of the design of the project. So as a user, after I upload photos, got the quick analytic result, you might, the top possibility result, there is an option the user can actually tap to get connected to a real dermatologist. But that is, again, I did not include that part in this portfolio because that's gonna really, I think, take probably another like case study to cover that side of the story, which was, I think, might become a distraction, honestly. So I just did not go into the details, but this is also part of my afterthoughts, which I think is fine to include. So, if your hiring manager or recruiter like see this portfolio, as long as they have enough information, from how you approach the problem, comes from, like understanding what are the pain points, generating user insights, and decided on how to approach the problem from low fidelity wireframes to hi-fi prototypes, and how you work the team to really like dive into the possible brainstorm the ideas of how to like streamline the process, how to streamline the current existing user journey, and demonstrate enough visual and prototypes that okay, this is something this might be a good candidate, and let's talk more to him or her. So I think again, this is something I want to like just a personal opinion, but I want to remind you guys, like, you don't have to show everything in a portfolio. And the best portfolios I see tends to be like keep the length of the story to a really good amount of information that is not too long, so you feel that, oh, this is a really interesting project and I want to know more about it, and that opens up the opportunity to the next round, so you can actually chat more and show more materials as you move forward to the interviews into the next step. So that's all I have for today. I hope this is helpful for you guys. And again, a couple of key points is, I think in a portfolio format, it's really important to keep in mind your audience is most of the case in a scanning mode rather than a reading mode. So you want to highlight the most important stuff and try to rely more on visual rather than text. And if there's anything like really critical that explains your thinking process and why you made certain design change, you might want to use annotations, colors, bullet point, anything that visually really jumped out, so your audience won't miss the critical information. And number two is, again, I think in a portfolio format, you really don't need to show every single detail of a project, just to pick the most important and most interesting part, and enough to demonstrate your skill sets, and just enough information to raise the interest And last thing is, I think result is always important. No matter what kind of project you work on, it might be a self-paced use case study. It might be a like actual real project you work as a freelancer, as a contractor, or at a team, a small team with a couple of designers. Like always, no matter which phase you ended at a project, try to have a summary of what's the result and what's the impact. The last thing I want to mention is, comes to visual, people have different kinds of opinion, and some might tell you that, okay, you're interviewing for a UX designer, not a UI or visual designer, so it doesn't matter as much for visual assets. No, at least my opinion is no. So I think every single elements you show in a portfolio matters, from text to visual, especially visual, which is always more eye-catching and attracts more attention. So if you are showing a post-it of your working process in a group, or you're showing a picture, or if you're showing a high-fidelity prototype, it all matters how you treat it visually. And I think even though UX designer is not a visual designer, visual is part of your job. And to be able to communicate things visually in a very clear way to explain what's the story behind is part of your job. So back to my point, if you are working on a portfolio, I want to encourage you guys, if you have spend a little bit time to polish it, like the case study we looked at today, I didn't go any crazy in terms of visual treatment, but you can see in a hero image and side-by-side comparisons, I try to put into a little bit extra efforts to make it really clear with the annotation to show what's my thoughts behind in a very brief and clear way, explaining, okay, this is the change I made and why I made it. Rather than rely too much heavy on text to tell the story. That's all I have for today. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and feel free to leave me comments if there's any topics you want to hear more. In the upcoming videos, we'll be doing a couple of portfolio reviews, not my own portfolio, but other UX professionals or aspiring UX designers portfolio, to look at what are some good and bad and things we can learn from. So stay tuned. There are more exciting stuff to come. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.